Thanks for joining me this afternoon. Today I'm going to be talking about how Target uses Asterisk to deliver calls in a mobile-first retail environment. Quick look at the agenda. We'll go through a little bit of introductions about myself and Target. We're going to talk about how Target delivered calls to team members on the sales floor just 4 years and change ago. We're going to take a little interlude to kind of go over the platform we use today that I've talked about in the past, but just a recap to give some context. We'll talk about how we're delivering calls today and get into some technical details. And of course, we'll leave some time for questions and answering and heckling or anything else. So, I'm Jason Park, for those of you who don't know me. I live up in Minnesota these days, but I'm from Kansas City. I'm not sure if anybody heard. My Kansas City Chiefs are the world champions. I missed the parade yesterday. Like to make phones ring. Been using open source tools since 1995, which probably dates me just a little bit. I'm sure I look younger than that. I've been using Asterisk since 2003. I used to be in the hosted services, web hosting type arenas, and we needed a new phone system one day, and I didn't like the pricing, and I found Asterisk, and I've been hooked ever since. So I presented at my first Astricon in 2011, got my decap there too. These days I'm a lead engineer on Target's infrastructure voice team. And I was brought in about 5 years ago to lead the transformation from proprietary voice systems there to using open source tools. If you're from the United States, I hope you know what Target is. I hope that you're shopping in our stores and often. We have, as of today, we have 1,948 stores. We open stores in the spring, in the summer, and the fall, so we'll be adding to that this year. We currently have 55 supply chain facilities that handle all the logistics of getting goods to our stores and also to our guests that are buying online. And we have over 400,000 team members spread across those stores, distribution centers, and our 28 office locations globally. Our headquarters is in Minneapolis. We have a couple of campuses up there. We have offices in New York, San Francisco, a large technology center in India, and then we have lots of offices in far-flung places that handle our sourcing of all the goods that we sell in our stores. And we do about $100 billion in revenue each year. Well, what about Target Tech? Target Tech is comprised of a few thousand, mainly engineers. We operate in an agile environment. We generally look at building before buying. We are users and contributors to many open source projects, and we're creators of some open source projects. I know somebody was talking earlier about PagerDuty. One of our open source projects is called GoAlert. It's a great replacement for PagerDuty if you want to take a look at it. And you can check out all those projects at github.com/Target. There's a bunch of awards up here talking about how great of a place Target is to work. I tend to agree. I love the culture there, especially the technology culture. We're always looking for engineers across a lot of disciplines. And you can get more information about that at jobs.target.com or hit me up afterwards, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have that I can. But with all that being said, what are we doing here today? So guest centricity and mobile voice. That's a big conjugation there. But it is important to Target that no matter how our guests are trying to interact or contact us, that it's as joyful experience as possible. It doesn't matter if they're on our website, if they're in our stores, or if they're calling us on the phone. We have a goal to get that guest to a team member that can help them as quickly and efficiently as possible. and get them there as directly as possible. 5 years ago, this had a lot of moving parts to do that when they call a store. Had pretty simple IVR. We have some third parties that operate in our stores. CVS operates pharmacies in our stores. A separate third party operates optical if we have like a glasses shop. And we had options for that on our menu, but then there was just one option on that IVR for reaching somebody in the store. It didn't matter what departments you needed, there was one option. And when you selected that option, it went to an operator, a classic, not a classic switchboard operator with different plugged cables, but they had an operator phone, they had other duties to take care of. In a lot of cases, they were managing our fitting rooms and things like that, and they were also responsible for taking these phone calls. And when they would get a phone call into the store, they'd pick up the phone, they'd answer it, they'd talk to the guest and decide what department they needed. Maybe it was electronics, maybe it's apparel and accessories, different departments like that. Once they determined that, they would park the call, and then they would pick up a walkie-talkie. We still use these today for different reasons. They'd pick up a walkie-talkie, they would put out a message and say, I have a guest. This would broadcast all the walkie-talkies in the store. I have a guest waiting on spot 5 for electronics. And then a fine team member in electronics would get that message, and they would walk the floor until they found one of these gorgeous pieces of apparatus we call a red phone, for obvious reasons. And they would pick up this phone, and they would pick up the call, and maybe they'd be able to help the guest directly. If they couldn't, they'd park the call again, they'd go get the information they needed, maybe on if something's available or not, and they would come back and pick up the call again. This is a lot of moving parts. Forgot to bring that one up, but yeah, the team member gets the reception and they go through that process, and there's a lot of moving parts. It's not, you know, especially 5 years ago, this wasn't much different than other retailers were doing. And there's still retailers that are doing call handling this way, with an operator divvying out the calls. For us and our business partners at Target that do store operations, it wasn't a great solution though. So before I talk about how we do it now, I want to give some context, because when I came on board at Target 5 years ago, they were just starting to talk about this. I hadn't had time to put in our new platform yet. So at the time they were using Cisco Call Manager, and we went through a few iterations making this kind of work with Cisco Call Manager before we had an open source solution in place. So I've given a presentation about this before at Astricon. If you want to see the slides about the platform, I'm happy to share them or answer any questions, but just kind of a quick recap so you have some context. The two core components we use are Comma Alio and Asterisk. For Comma Alio, it's doing a lot of very important functionality for us in our data centers. It's doing inbound call routing, outbound call routing, making sure the calls get to the right store, the right distribution center, feature-specific clusters for voicemail, IVRs, that type of thing. And it's doing all of our E911 zone assignment and making sure callbacks get to the right place for E911 calls. The second part is Asterisk, which is why we're all here. When I gave this presentation on the platform a few years ago, I called it the upside down in the feature funeral. And it was upside down because while I made a career out of centralizing things, whether it's in hosted services or voice services, and most enterprises are going to centralized, we went a decentralized route. After looking at the resources available at Target and what we were working with, it made the most sense. And I'm happy to have a robust conversation about the pros and cons of that. I'm always excited to talk about that because it's a little different. So find me if you want to chat about that. We have over 2,000 individual instances of Asterisk because we're running mini Asterisk instances in every store. And the feature funeral part of that is that these are bare bones Asterisk instances. Josh talked earlier about keeping it boring, keeping it simple. We looked at all the features. We didn't list out all the features that the previous solution Call Manager had, but there was thousands. Lots of great features, but we were only using about 5. So it didn't make sense to carry all that over. So we were able to strip down Asterisk to the bare bones, get rid of features that weren't needed, and really simplify things. And those boxes do not hit a database directly for anything. There's not a lot of changes in our stores, so we were able to cookie cutter that. Is a phrase we use about it and really simplify it. There's a lot of accessories. We're using Chef for orchestration. We have lots of Python tooling. We have a web portal that we built on our team for us to manage the platform, but also for our business partners and support partners to help us and give them the ability to manage this as well. When we had level 1 and level 2 support doing or trying to do changes in Call Manager where you have as many knobs and dials and sliders that you can dream up, that was a big challenge for us for training and things with the GUI we built. It is not featureful, it's just feature enough for what our users need. And we're using a lot of open source tools for monitoring and alerting. We're using Homer for SIP capture, Telegraph primarily to get stuff into our metrics pipeline, and an Elk Stack for all of our logging and CDRs. So with that being said, let's jump back real quick. This is what things looked like 5 years ago. Call comes in, operator phone, walkie-talkie, red phone, and so forth. Today, things look a little differently. We've still got an IVR there. It's still not an overly complicated IVR. There's still options to reach those third parties. There's still options to get store information like location and hours, and then detailed options to reach departments. Again, this isn't some kind of super cool IVR. It's literally, if you want help, you're pressing 1 for electronics, 2 for guest services. I don't have the others memorized, but food and beverage, whatever it might be. The big difference now is that then the call is delivered directly to a team member that's in that department, that the system knows is working in that department. And they are assigned those departments and those work areas based on what their job duties are for that day. And calls are delivered to, we'll talk about this more in just a second, but to a mobile device that they carry. And that brings us to the client side. We call these My Devices. We don't build these in-house or anything, but they're Android devices. This one doesn't have power. You'd see the cool little barcode scanner that it has. Team members use this My Device for everything from starting their shift and finding out what their responsibilities are for the day. When a truck comes in with product, they're checking all the product in and stocking it and keeping track of inventory levels with it. They're getting alerts on it about different tasks they might have that come up during the day. If you've used our drive-up service where you come up and park in front of the store and they bring stuff out to you, the alerts that you were there are delivered to the team member on these devices. And some of these devices we even have a sled for that will take payment. So if we have long lines or something like that, team members can do what we call line busting and get folks taken care of quicker. So one of the biggest app on here that has to do, the second biggest app on here that has to do with us on voice is called My Day. And My Day is an internally built app where the team member logs in to start the day, and they select their work areas. Some of those are auto-assigned based on job role. If you're a manager, if you're a leader in the store, you're auto going to get mapped to the leader area. Other areas, somebody may be working in food and beverage and apparel and accessories, or electronics and hard goods, these different things. My Day takes that information and delivers it as intents to the soft phone we use. And from there, the soft phone does a few different things. When we first started and we were using, we were still on Call Manager with this because I just wasn't working fast enough to get Asterisk out there. We had to use registrations and multiple registrations. So each of these, every time you'd log into the department, that was a separate registration. If you were logged into 3 departments, you had 3 SIP registrations to Cisco, 4 SIP registrations to Cisco. On the Asterisk side, this isn't a big deal. It's not like we're bound by licensing. On the Cisco side, it was a big deal because we had to limit how many team members could log into a certain department in a certain store. So when we revisioned this, as we're putting together the open source platform, we came up with using SIP subscribes for departments. And this seemed like a really slick solution. And to some degree it has been, but I'll get into the challenges here in a second. And it's just standard SIP subscribe. Those intents come over from My Day, and electronics hits us, and my device can map that to an extension for that department, basically a pilot extension for what eventually you'll see as a dial group. And on the Asterisk side, the subscribe is processed against a custom hint. Again, this isn't anything super cool. It's pretty standard type stuff in the Asterisk dial plan. Departments, like I said, are basic dynamic dial groups. We do have some static hard phones around the store. IP phones for like electronics generally has one. Guest services has 1 or 2 in most stores. So those are statically assigned, and those are always in that group. But the ones that are subscribing, these soft phones on the My Device, are getting automatically added at dial time. And this dial is just a standard dial with a bunch of ampersands, right? Like a lot of us have probably done with all the different extensions. But how do we get that list of subscribers? I would be very happy to walk out of here today with somebody telling me there's a better way to do this. Just to be transparent. But today, calls get presented from the IVR for departments after a guest makes an IVR selection. We build the dial group dynamically by harvesting those Asterisk subscribers, and we're doing that with an AGI. And we're doing it with an AGI that's hitting the Asterisk SQL.
Oh, interesting.
and there's the select statement. As some of you probably know, the schema for the Asterisk built-in database is very developed. It has 2 columns. And so while this pretty simple SQL query here will give us all the persistent subscriptions, from there we've got to take those and dive into those. They're basically SIP packets that are stored in there. We dive into those to make sure that we just want to grab the ones that match the extension of the department. From there, we've got to look at the expires time and compare it to the current time and make sure there's no no false positives in there, which we have run into. And then from there, we do some deduplication because no technology is perfect. We definitely have instances where our soft phone is saying that one team member is in the same department multiple times. So we clear out all that. I would love to have a way to get to this information straight from the dial plan a little easier. I suspect, unless somebody blows my mind in the next few minutes on something that I've completely missed, that it's going to take some work in the core or a module to get to that information. But it would certainly be a big positive for us. But when it all comes down, what we've done is, instead of a guest dealing with an IVR, an operator, and then finally getting to somebody on the floor that can actually help them and is an expert in that area, we're getting the call there in almost all cases directly. We keep track of missed calls, so we can see what levels things go through. If the call's for electronics and it doesn't get answered, we roll it over to guest services, and we keep track of those so we can see what misses we get. That missed call reporting is actually a really cool system too. We're using Kafka for that and delivering that data up in near real time out of all of those Asterisk instances. If you like to watch scrolling text, we got a really cool command line tool that'll just spit it out over and over. So we do have some stuff to back this up. As I go on to the feedback here, one of the big projects we have for this year, which I'd love to come back and talk about next year, is today that IVR I'm talking about lives out in a proprietary system owned by our contact center, which our contact center isn't on the same team as us, and so we're working to build a solution to move that over to open source, again with Conalio and Asterisk, and then we'll own the entire chain of the call, which comes with more responsibility, but will give us a more holistic view of what that caller and that guest is looking for, and how they got there, and how they got to an endpoint and hopefully resolution. So, with that being said, I am happy to take questions on this process or the platform in general. David.
So you use the subscribes to know who's in what department, who to call based on what people are trying to reach. So electronics, if somebody's in electronics, let's say in home goods, so that or you use the subscribes to figure out who to send calls to?
Yeah, so when somebody logs into this device, they select that some of their work areas are selected for them, and then they select other work areas that they're going to be in that day, and it sends a notice over to the soft phone and says, hey, these are the departments that this person's going to take calls for today. And just as a note, when they pick this up, it's not like a team member has a set extension. Every time you put this on a charger, it logs out. They get a new extension next time. It might be 5 people might use this device in a day. But it sends the message over to the soft phone. The soft phone is then each of those departments, it's sending a subscribe to Asterisk to record that they're interested in these departments. And then we harvest that information to build the dial route, basically.
What would a simple solution be to send, because you own the whole stack, to send a web request to your system saying this is the departments they're in, and then you could connect into the AMI or go directly through the CLI and just set a global variable, just add to this global variable this SIP extension, and then know their SIP extension, and then whenever you dial, instead of looking and seeing who you have to call, you just call a variable from memory and automatically all the agents in that group will automatically be called.
That would be super. We don't own the soft phone, so the soft phone doesn't have that functionality. If it did, I'd be hitting an API and doing it very similar to what you just described, so.
Why do you have to do it to the phone? If you own the other software on the device, why don't you have that?
That software is also owned by another team. We have lots of teams, so we have to pick and choose our spots. So, Fred.
I mean, it's impressive, the subscription. I wouldn't have thought of that off the top of Asterisk, so I mean, it's nice, of course, should you ever put a comment or something. No, but, have you guys considered doing like a dynamic add queue member or something? For
You know,
I'm just wondering.
you know, some of the other, oh, sorry, I didn't catch the end of that.
No,
Fred.
I mean, I like this method. It's awesome.
When I've done this in the past, we have done like star codes to log in, different things like that, which is really flexible. But we're trying to take as much of that work that the team member in the store has to do to get logged into the departments out of the equation as possible. So auto logging them in like that, using the subscribes has worked really well. As we re-envision that soft phone, we're going to be looking at different ways to do it. I don't think we'll be using SIP subscribe in 3 years, but it's certainly getting us where we need to do today.
I mean, the problem I've always had with queues, I mean, which would have been the way I, just tunnel visioned on it, right? But the problem I've always had is that users never unlog from queues, so you have to clean up scripts, right? But so the subscription expiration was.
Yes. Now, I will say this was iterative. We weren't looking at that expires directly when we first did this. And then folks were getting calls from departments that the last folks, that had that phone were logged into. The other issue we ran into as we've brought up SIP RFCs all day. At one point, our soft phone was doing whatever the maximum amount of expired time is, which is several years. That was not a good solution. So we did have to work around some challenges there. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Hi. Are you doing anything for the stores for SMS or MMS or chat?
We don't do any type of messaging like that in the stores today. We do have some teams working on SMS in other parts of Target, and it's actually a separate team that owns all of the SMS and messaging outside of us. But I know they're looking at it for the stores and what they can do about it, because guests are just like us when you guys literally hopefully are guests. You like to text people instead of call. We want to give them those options, and hopefully those are in the future. Yeah.
Might be a bit of an overkill, but Daniel wrote a blog post how to handle subscription within the Kamailio and save the state of the subscription within the Kamailio. And from there on, you have an HTTP request to wherever you want, for example, or have a state in the Kamailio itself with your query, and from there on, you can go to your fast API or AGI or whatever, to just say here's a new device. Might be a bit big to have a Kamailio for each and every shop you have.
Yeah, we have looked at it. A couple of the features we need are best handled by Asterisk in those stores. So we need Asterisk there. Asterisk, for what we're using, for the amount of phones we're using it for, in a micro instance in the store, is working very easily and very reliably. We have, I won't tell you how long some of the instances have been up, because they probably need rebooted. But it speaks to the resiliency of that machine, and Asterisk itself has been very good to us. But especially as we look at the possibility of a different soft phone, and as to this gentleman spoke about text messaging, as the needs of the guests change, we will look at all of that as possibilities. And that's one of the things I like about working at Target is we're not afraid to look at that type of thing. We're not gonna get stuck in a box, and not look outside of it. So, all right, real quick. Does anybody know the name of this gentleman? Who's the first one? Cheers. There you go. All right. Any other questions? No? Thanks, everybody.